Well, welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, I talked to Dr. Julie Hinman about the over 40 body, weight loss, wellness, and hormone health. So for all of you over 40 like me, you're definitely going to want to listen to this one. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind. Hello. Welcome, Dr. Julie. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Christina, for having me. I'm excited to talk with
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you on, being someone who works with women all over the world. I want to have people on our podcast that can answer questions that, quite frankly, I can't answer. As many trainings as myself and my assistant coach Amanda do, I look to you as one of the experts and the work that you've done with some of the clients that we've worked with together has really stood out to me, and that's why I wanted to have you on today because you there isn't a lot of people who I've met in the industry that do align in the way that you and I do, and I know for our audience that they're really going to enjoy learning from you today. So I appreciate you coming on. So, for those of you listening, Dr. Julie is a dedicated family nurse practitioner, a mother of three, and a thriving business owner and an entrepreneur. She has a firm belief that health transformation begins with nutrition and movement. Thank you. Dr. Hinman has built her career in the principles of holistic wellness. Her health programs focus on nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset as the cornerstones of optimal health. With over 2 decades of experience in healthcare, Dr. Hinman's background spans from family practice and emergency medicine. She left a successful medical career to pursue her passion for private practice, leading to the establishment of a growing business and a flourishing speaking career. Dr. Hinman is a proud member of the Institute of Functional Medicine, the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Longevity Medicine, and the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners. She holds a clinical weight management certification from the A4M and earned a Master's of Science in Nursing and a Doctor of Nursing Practice from the University of Arizona, Tucson, which we will not hold against her as Sun Devils. As the founder of the Complete Metabolic Reset for weight loss, Dr. Hinman leverages her extensive education and personal health journey to help others. Her experience spans longevity and functional medicine, weight loss, gut health, and immunity. She shares her insight with strategies with women who, like her, have faced health and weight challenges through through her own experience and her education. So today, you guys, I cannot stress how excited I am. And I want you guys to probably get a notepad and take some notes today because we have a lot of questions. So tell me a little bit about, I know, we've talked in length about your experience and kind of how you and I can work best together, but tell me about that kind of transition between, traditional medicine and then coming into the more functional medicine space.
Yeah. So I like to say that I grew up in functional medicine, or excuse me, I grew
Mhm.
up in traditional medicine. And most providers that you find in functional medicine have had their own health journey. And so I very much was started out my career invested in the traditional route, envisioned myself at the highest of heights in the hospital system, helping people through their worst days. And I got to experience that. But I would say that experience, coupled with my own autoimmune diagnosis in my mid 20s, I was 26 when I was diagnosed with arthritis,
Mm.
psoriatic arthritis that was really impacting me at a deep level that really drove my path into functional medicine. And so I was practicing and living a very different lifestyle than traditional medicine. Like I myself wanted to stay away from medication. I didn't want the prescription that was being offered to me with that diagnosis, and I wanted to know why. And most of and these were well respected, well trained, well meaning doctors who, when I asked them why was I experiencing this, because I felt like I was really young, and in hindsight, like I was only 26. So it was extremely young for an autoimmune diagnosis. And when I asked them why, they were just like, well, some people get this, here's your prescription. This is just what you're going to take. And I just wasn't willing to so easily just get on board with that. So that's how I found myself here in functional medicine today. Obviously, that's kind of the early stages of the journey, but that really drove me and motivated me to answer my own health questions, and through that, realize that there was a lot more that others outside of the industry were lacking and wanted from their healthcare.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love when we can, take our expertise, but also our own experiences and, kind of not only know what we know, right? Because obviously you had this extensive education, but you also knew like how you felt in your body and being able to trust yourself and then take and trust who you are. We talk about this a lot at the Mindset of Matter, and then obviously in our podcast about your body is the expert, right? It's going to communicate to you. And unfortunately, there's so much misinformation out there. There are still to this day a lot of physicians who will look at someone and say, you look fine. Maybe their BMR is okay or BMI is okay. Maybe some of their blood levels look, on average, okay. They're not necessarily optimal. And a lot of people will just be prescribed something and they'll try it out. And then they ended up being on these medications for the rest of their lives. And or some of these medications may even cause more secondary symptoms either right away or even down the line, which then I think of like birth control specifically that we've seen more recently in women. But I want to know about, your experience specifically with female health on misinformation out there. And I think of, my Instagram, TikTok, and I'm very much, I clean out mine, but before I had that boundary with myself, just all of the information about, especially a woman over 40. I've shared with my audience, I don't know if I've shared with you, I've had a hysterectomy at age 35. And there are 70 different ways to help a body that is in midlife. But let's just start with what you see as, the misinformation or misleading products in the industry. If you can just shed some light on that and your experience with that.
We could talk for about an hour on this topic alone. I have a huge amount to say. I have a great deal amount to say. And number one, first of all, to speak to your body. Our bodies are always giving us clues. They're giving us sometimes very gentle reminders and sometimes louder reminders. And so you might have what I like to call as a gentle tap. Maybe it's headaches that frequently occur around the same time of the day. Maybe it's the same time of the month. Maybe it's, heavy periods or irregular periods. Those are more gentle symptoms to maybe those more advanced, more aggressive symptoms where your body is like, there's a disruption here. And if your traditional doc, if you're feeling that way and your traditional doc is telling you, nope, everything looks good, like they either haven't listened deep enough to what you're saying, or we haven't checked enough as far as deep as we need to go as far as things like blood work or gut health. I always kind of laugh that sometimes, if you're telling me that you feel horrible and they're telling you everything's, or normal on the blood work, there's typically something that I can find. Now, do we want to find things that are wrong with you? No, not always, but we want to help restore your health. So remembering and trusting our inner intuition as women is extremely important. And we're often told to put it to the side. Everything's okay, or that's just your emotions. Here's a prescription to kind of numb the pain or the emotional pain maybe that we're feeling. And so I think it's extremely important. And I love that you're focusing on that with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
to kind of go into the second part of that question was about misinformation. And we are in a society that has more information, more research than we honestly know what to do with. It's impossible to actually keep up because it is coming out at such an incredible speed. And what that has caused is, number one, the amount of information hasn't necessarily transitioned into improved health. As a matter of fact, we're actually in worse health than we've ever been, despite having all the information and all of the research to support better health decisions. And that is, it's a long discussion, but I would say that finding someone who can support you, who really understands the research, and who really understands human health, pathophysiology, biology is extremely important. And the other piece I would add to this is that so often you can find a lot of people online in the online space who have no credentials, zero experience besides their own experience, and they're attempting to assist people with hormone health or calling themselves a hormone coach, which really means absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Um, and it can do a lot of damage. We see patients that come in here and they've tried everything and maybe they've had a little improvement, they've been helped with their nutrition or their lifestyle, but they're desperate. And if you're not getting the result, it can be really easy as women. We internalize things that it's us or that we're alone in this struggle, that we see, fitness health coach
Influencers.
online and they're getting the result. Like, what is wrong with me that I'm not able to do that same thing? And um, it can be a really tough place to be online, places like TikTok and Instagram right now.
Absolutely. I mean, as myself as a therapist, I see so many people who will be binge eating, or the one I see is this binge psychology coach. And there's no experience in like there's no training around that. There's no, the person putting on these trainings are like you said, usually someone who has had their own experience and they tried this method and because it worked for them, they think, oh, well, I'll just share this with the masses, or they go through, I've even seen people go through certifications on trauma-informed coaching, and the coaching program has nobody there that has credentials of any kind. It pains me. It makes me very angry because if in my case, working in trauma, it can, you need to be able to learn how to bring someone down out of even a psychotic, not a psychotic break, but like a very traumatic experience that they're processing. So I can imagine for you seeing, and I see it too, I'm a, you know, perimenopause, menopause specialist. I am, certified in X, Y, and Z. And they don't have the credentials to be giving any of that advice. It's actually out of the scope of their practice, but people don't know that. And if you
Yeah.
are, as I call, a great talking head, you're really convincing, you're going to have a lot of people who believe you. If you got sparkly videos and, it's really sexy and it sounds too good to be true most of the time it is, but there's that, selling of the programs. And I think of my own clients who've gone through several of these programs, shelling out thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, only to end up with us. Thank God, and finally getting to a place where they can, feel better in their bodies. And obviously, we're big proponents of connecting to other providers instead of trying to be super women and do it all here. We can't, so but we've just seen it over and over again that these coaches, specialists, they, send out a ton of misinformation, and or you would go to two different assessments. This person says, oh, you're experiencing lack of sleep. You're not able to lose weight. You have low energy. Oh, and your blood sugar is not regulated. This side says you need to eat more, eat all of the carbs, do all the things, and then flush your body out and remove the carbs. This side says you need to be fat adapted. You need to, completely remove carbs, completely remove proteins, and just focus on fats. And it's literally the same symptoms. And both sides are like, do it this way or do it this way, instead of saying, let's figure out what your body wants.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
Absolutely.
frustrating. So let's talk about like for you, like what do women, especially midlife, we just talked about some symptoms. What are the things that you're seeing that tend to get dismissed?
Mm. It can be
Probably a
all
long list.
across. Yeah, it is a long list. It can be all across the board. Uh, Most often, I will say that it's the emotional symptoms and the fatigue that are dismissed the most. And,
Mhm.
I have three children. I'm 41. I feel the pressures of life and business and family and all of those things. So some days it's easy to say, gosh, why am I so tired? Well, it's because I legitimately have very many reasons to be tired.
Hmm.
But oftentimes there can be so much more going on. It can be as simple as something like a vitamin D deficiency causes huge problems with mood and energy levels. And so if you're vitamin D deficient or even vitamin B deficient, or you have a problem methylating, um, it can cause trouble. And so, traditional medicine often may dismiss those symptoms, and it's very easy, to provide a prescription for things like SSRIs, like Lexapro or Zoloft, and just say, let me know how you feel in about 8 to 12 weeks. Hopefully, you'll feel better. Many women
Hmm.
just report feeling numb, like they don't feel better, but they don't feel worse, but they're able to get through their day. And I would say that that's a really big problem if there's a vitamin or mineral deficiency and we're treating it with a psychiatric medication or an antidepressant. It's troubling to know that that would be happening. And so I would say that those are the main symptoms. Other oftentimes overlooked symptoms, difficulty with partners, right? And so a
Hmm.
lot of this stuff gets referred out to psychology or psychiatry or to therapy, as trouble with a spouse, which could be just an intimacy problem with low libido, could be coming
Hmm.
from your husband, it could be coming from the female, the female partner. And that also is just chalked up to a normal part of aging, which I'm 41 this year, turned 42 in a few months. And it's disappointing because I don't feel old, but to know that a lot of
Right.
these symptoms and things that
Right.
are just changes in our hormone cycle are things that are either dismissed or just overlooked by traditional medicine.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're the same age. And it's so interesting how, you hit the nail on the head of the things that my clients are saying. It's, you're just anxious. You're making this up in your head. Your low libido, or even like, yes, low libido, which can create issues in intimacy. They are, talk to a therapist, go to couples counseling, like you said, be on an SSRI or some medication to help with the anxiety. And we're not asking more questions, right? It's just, okay. And I've had this experience. I've talked about this on the podcast a few times. Um, and this isn't necessarily around aging per se, but my mom had thyroid cancer. And I went to a general primary care physician, and I said, "Hey, I want to make sure that I'm, like at least doing some preventative care. Just I don't know what that is. So at Min, can I get my thyroid tested? That's, what I know in my scope of practice." He says, "Oh, no, no. We're just gonna they do like your general blood panel, and we'll test your TSH." And I know that just testing my TSH isn't necessarily going to show the health of my thyroid, correct?
Correct.
And he was like, "Nope, that's all you need." And I'm telling him, like, my mom had her thyroid removed. This is something that's important to me. And even for me, I wasn't even necessarily having symptoms, but I have this family history. And it just kind of was dismissed for that. Um, but I think it's important too for women, specifically those, again, in midlife. And for you guys, like when I say midlife, you're like, midlife, I'm 40. That's 40 to 60 is technically what we're considering midlife. So don't shoot the messenger. And I'm also in midlife. But, you know, we've talked about low libido, right? That is definitely something that happens with changing hormones. That is even something if you're not eating enough, which obviously can affect your hormones. Low energy. But what are the things like as we're in midlife, what are some changes in our bodies that our listeners should just kind of be like, that's interesting. I should pay attention to that, or keep like a symptom, a journal or whatever that looks like. What are some things that our listeners can pay attention to so that when they do see their provider, they can be sharing that information? Because it could be a sign of, even just the menopause transition, or even just issues with their hormones in general.
Yeah, good question. So I would say that insulin resistance is probably one of the biggest threats to society, to us as individuals, currently, and it impacts our insulin. Insulin is a hormone. If you didn't know that, not you, but your listeners, if you didn't know that, insulin is a very important hormone, and it has far-reaching impacts. And so it can be associated with weight gain around the middle. It's, one of the reasons why we see women in midlife that oftentimes have a similar shape around their abdomen. They can have kind of an apple shape. And it's where, insulin affects our estrogen, which we're more likely to have that estrogen, kind of weight around our abdomen if we have a toxic over, or we have a high toxic burden. And it can be very difficult to lose that weight. And a simple blood test that most primary care doctors are definitely testing at least once a year is called a hemoglobin A1C. It looks at our blood sugar control for like a 3-month period, looks at how much glucose is stuck to the outside of the red blood cell. And a red blood cell has a 3-month lifespan. And that's where we come up with that number. And so higher blood sugars cause the red blood cell to have more glucose on the outside, and that will reflect a higher hemoglobin A1C. But that's extremely important. Even if it's in the normal range, but it's close to the normal range, and someone who is exercising, feeling like they eat a nutritious diet, it could be that this has something to do with your stress, your nutrition, your lifestyle, but it definitely can have, we can definitely see it associated with women who are in the perimenopause period. So that's one thing to absolutely be looking at. We also can check things like insulin levels as well to kind of show us, like, do you have a higher insulin level, or maybe you have a lower insulin level? Like, where are you at? That test is typically not ordered by a traditional medicine, but can be really predictive of also a future diagnosis of diabetes. So those are 2 important tests. The other is DEXA scans and bone density. Knowing our family history as far as like, when did our mothers experience perimenopause? Are they experiencing things, and our siblings as well? Are they experiencing osteopenia or osteoporosis? And what are you doing to prevent it? It is critically important. So those are 2 tests. And I would say, I know, and you talk to your listeners about the importance of strength training, but both of those markers can be dramatically improved just through a strength program. And with nutrition and lifestyle changes, it can be greatly improved.
I love that. Thank you for the strength training nod. I told you guys, see, we know what we're talking about. I think that, number one, thank you for sharing that, because for again, a lot of people, and this is where social media can be educational. Like, it can be overwhelming, but at least we know there are other options out there. But still, there are those people who simply go to their primary and they think that they're getting everything that they need. Whereas like a DEXA or, testing insulin levels, like you said, that's not something that they're generally going to go to. So the more that, listeners, more that we can educate ourselves on these things, the better off, and the more support that they can receive, or at least data to then take to, someone like yourself to help read and help to create a plan of attack. And so, we touched on a little bit of lifestyle. One of the main questions I get from our clients is like supplements, right? And we're big on getting your vitamins and minerals from your food. However, a lot of our clients are very, just like yourself, very busy women. We have women in very, high level positions. They have a limited amount of time to do things like meal prep. And while they, we as their coaches work on creating the best plan and process, sometimes they do have to do things like supplement. So in regards to the 40-plus-year-old female, what are supplements that you see, or like things you see on on blood panels that, as we age, we become more deficient in, or just in general are something that we should be taking? And again, for your general woman, obviously, guys, everyone is individual. So take this with what you would take it with.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. So, okay. So to preface this, I want to just mention, and this goes into the coaching industry, and the fact that the wellness space and the supplement industry is about $87 billion. Like,
Oh, yeah.
not million, $87 billion. And so
Mhm.
we want to be aware of the fact that we're always being sold something, right? And social media is a great place for very expensive, well-branded supplements to get a lot of traction. And so I want your listeners to be cautious when it comes to supplements for specific conditions, because one of the challenges for many of my patients, and they're well-meaning, will come in with bags of supplements. And I'm not kidding when I say
Wow.
like 3 shopping bags.
Hmm.
And I myself, when I was trying to solve that disorder in my early 20s, was like supplemented to the max. My naturopath put me on some stuff. I like Googled and was trying to fix my symptoms. I went into the health food store. This is before social media. Um, but I went into the health food store and just like bought a bunch of stuff that was like, oh, liver support and this support and that
Yeah.
support. And my eyes turned yellow and I ended up with stress on my liver. Like my liver enzymes
Wow.
went up. It took actually years for that problem to clear up. So be cautious. Our liver and our kidneys are filters, but supplements are not without risk. And they are also, you're at risk if you're on prescription medications and you're, going to the supplement store and you're just buying things off the shelf. So you really want to have someone who's experienced in supplements to look at both your prescription medications and your supplements.
Mm.
Compounded pharmacies with pharmacists are also another good provider to use if you wanted to discuss that with a pharmacist. They're great resources.
I interrupt this episode to bring to you our June discount on our one-to-one coaching program. Y'all do not want to miss this. If you are someone who needs accountability, support, someone to hold your hand through this really tough work of rewiring your mind to let go of yo-yo dieting, emotional eating, binge eating, excessive exercise, this is a program for you. The Mindset Method one-to-one coaching, again, is our most intimate program. You get a one-to-one call with your coach every single week. Every week, y'all. This allows you to process, understand the underlying and root causes to the behaviors that you need to rid yourself in an effort to see the results you desire. On top of that, you get direct access to your coach through our messenger and our app any time of the day or week, your coach being there to help you on the other side. You get customized nutrition protocols as well as well phased and well programmed exercise protocols. And these will change over the period of the 4 months that you're with your coach. On top of that, you get resources, self care resources, resources to help you with your nutrition, access to our amazing community of women, and so much more. For the month of June, using the code June Mindset, you are going to get $250 off our Mindset Method one-to-one coaching program. You will not want to miss this. Seats are limited as we only have so many clients that we are open to taking. If you are interested, you will want to sign up for a clarity call, the link being below. And in this clarity call, we're both interviewing each other. This program takes a lot of work. You need to be ready, willing, and able to do this work. And so myself and Coach Amanda will decide if you are ready and if you are a good candidate for our program, as well as we hope you decide if we're a good candidate for your coach. And so if you are interested in that, please click the link below. This is only going to be offered to our podcast listeners, so take advantage of it. Other than that, let's get back to the show.
So that to start, I would say that less is really more when it comes to supplements. Everyone, everyone, even kids, and I won't give you the dosing for kids. You have need to talk with your doctor about it. However, for needs vitamin D. In
Mm-hmm.
all of my years of checking vitamin D levels, I have not ever seen anyone that has not been supplementing with an optimal vitamin D level. Now, what does optimal mean? The lab, when you have your vitamin D checked at, say, LabCorp, SnoreQuest, the lab will tell you 30 to 50 is normal and 70, 90 is at risk for toxicity. That is not the case. 30 is far too low. 50
Mm-hmm.
is suboptimal, and our goal is to be about 70 to 90. We know that levels at that level, we have a decreased risk for things like cardiovascular disease, cancer risk reduction goes down. Bone density is another thing that's hugely impacted. And vitamin D is another hormone. So we should be cautious when using it. However, it is an important component to maintaining a healthy weight, and lowering our risk factor for any disease. The standard dose is 4,000 IUs of vitamin D per day. So you can safely take that amount. And I would say if you're taking 4,000 IUs and you miss a day here or there, likely your numbers are still within a normal and optimal range. So that is number one, just so incredibly important for your listeners.
Mhm. I take vitamin D, so that makes me happy.
Yes. And I love the vitamin D drops because you can just put them in your water and then you can
Oh,
just make sure your spouse is taking them or make sure that your kids are taking them too and you're, prepping water
yeah,
bottles in the
that's
morning.
great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't even know that existed. I just have I'm like a grandma and I have my, Monday through Sunday and I just put my little pills in it. So I love that.
And so the
And
other piece of that is that vitamin D should be taken with K2. So your
mhm,
vitamin D supplement, if it does not have K2 in it, you should really the next time make sure that you're investing in a vitamin D with K2. We know that it's important for bone mineralization. And so the vitamin D can actually, just taken alone can cause decreased bone mineralization. Not everyone knows that, especially your primary care. So it's important to take it. And then also if you magnesium can help to facilitate the absorption of vitamin D. And so taking it together can be important. The dosing on magnesium is 120 to 360 milligrams per day. Many people are magnesium deficient. And so that's also something you can take, knowing that the higher doses will, maybe increase and cause some GI upset, maybe diarrhea if you're taking too high of a dose.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next supplement. Do you want me to give my other two?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I'm
All
learning
right.
so
So,
much because
okay.
I do take the things you're talking about, and I also realized like I was like, yep, I know when I'm taking too much magnesium because that's what happens.
Yep,
But yes.
exactly. The next supplement that I would recommend that really everyone needs to be using 40 and above is an omega 3. Omega 3s are super important to our cell function. It's important to our gut microbiome, our brain. We know about the research and even using these in pediatric patients and babies because they've got all that brain development happening. And so omega 3 is absolutely essential. The dosing is between 1,000 to 3,600 milligrams per day. I'd say at 1,800, you're probably getting what you need from an omega 3.
Mhm.
Making sure there's a couple of things with your omega 3 when you're choosing is that you want to be using small fish that are wild caught because when it's coming from other sources it can be more contaminated with heavy metals, which is another reason why supplements can be a little tricky.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Last supplement number 3 for just the general woman. And all of these supplements are so good for most people, even our younger patients. But number 3 is an omega, or excuse me, probiotic.
Yes.
So probiotics, even if you don't feel like you have gut dysfunction, are so important. And making sure that it's a high quality probiotic. My favorite. Can I tell you my favorite?
Absolutely.
Okay. I love seed probiotic, SEED.
Yes, I just looked into seed. I literally was like, I need to probably, start this. I take actually BPC 157 up for my gut. But I need to do, I don't take a probiotic. So seed.
Seed is amazing. I've had such great testimonials with this product. And
Hmm.
from everything from my husband who started taking it, and one of the skin rashes we had on his face cleared up within 2 weeks. Like it was
Amazing.
mind blowing. And I kept telling him, it's your gut, it's your gut. I just bought him the
Hmm.
seed and put it on the counter. And 2 weeks later, it's better. And if he's taking it, the rash is resolved. So it goes back to our immune system lives in our gut. And our immune system is critical to every single component of our body. Like we used to think it was the bone marrow where our immune system was in our blood, but it's
Hmm.
not. It's primarily located in our guts. We need to focus on the gut microbiome, focus on our gut health, and a probiotic is a great way to do it. For all of the moms out there with little ones, they also have a kids version. You can open up the regular adult version and put like it in a smoothie and split it between 2 kids, or they have little mixing sticks. And
Hmm.
I gave this product to a girlfriend who's 2.5 year old, was just having a really hard time potty training, was constipated all the time. The doctor kept putting him on Miralax, which is
Oh,
horrible.
It happens
and
all of the time.
all of the time.
I have a
Two,
16-year-old I work with who,
yeah.
same thing, same thing.
So two weeks, same thing. 2 weeks, this little boy was potty trained. So
Wow.
I mean, it just is a great product. It's a little expensive, but if you are dealing with gut microbiome or you want to make sure you're focused on the supplements that are going to move the needle for you and not just,
Mhm.
spending money on here and there. Um, the last thing that I'm going to add here is we talked about thyroid, and thyroid is we're more likely to have mineral deficiencies when we have thyroid problems like hypothyroidism. And
Mhm.
so iodine is an essential nutrient for the thyroid. Also, other minerals like selenium um, and copper and zinc. So finding a multi-mineral supplement is essential to your thyroid function. The last thing that I'll add with that is that so many of us have removed iodized salt from our diet.
Mhm.
We need to bring it back. Like
Yes.
it's okay to have iodized
Yes.
salt. And we,
I'm an LMNT type of girl. Do you know what that is?
yeah.
I love
Is there iodine
LMNT.
though?
I'm not
And
sure. I'll have to actually look. I've
I don't
not.
think so. But
Okay.
I do love it for electrolytes. Yes.
Yes, it's my favorite. That's really helpful for me too, because again, like I want to making sure that I'm taking care of my thyroid health with the family history that we have. I also have I have clients with hypothyroidism. I have clients with Epstein-Barr, which obviously they're receiving treatment and on iodine. Um, this actual person is she was on the what is the thyroxazine or whatever the medication is, and she just wasn't feeling great. She took herself off of it and then started working with a provider similar to yourself. And with the lifestyle changes that we're making, plus also, or we plan to make, I should say, she's a new client, and also her supplementation, she's really optimistic that she can, be feel a lot of her symptoms from that will be at least manageable without having to take the medication because it was really the medication itself was having she was having a lot of struggles with it. So it's very interesting. So on top of supplementation, so we talked about supplementation, we've talked about, some of the symptoms to look at. We've also kind of touched on the lifestyle changes. Uh, I want to just dig a little bit deeper into that. So strength training, I'd love for you to kind
Mhm.
of explain that a little bit further and other lifestyle changes, for us over 40-year-old ladies. What are other lifestyle changes that we can start making now so that we can hopefully be the healthiest versions of ourselves moving into this period of our lives?
Yes, absolutely. Well, number one, we need to start now. Like we have to start building strength early if possible. Because of the hormone shifts, it makes it extremely difficult to build lean muscle postmenopausal. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it becomes harder to do so. So the more lean muscle we can build well before perimenopause period or during perimenopause period, which with the hormone shifts that we experience as women, we sometimes will have higher testosterone levels with the lower estrogen, or lower progesterone levels. And so it can make it easier to build strength in perimenopause. So we want to really drive those efforts.
Mm,
Our lean muscle mass
interesting.
is critical to our overall health. It is the powerhouse of, it is our power. And it's extremely important that we focus on that. So it'll lead to better blood sugar, which leads to, higher caloric needs, which I don't know about you, but I like to be able to eat more food, right?
Yes.
Um, so like not eating, I mean, definitely we're not putting on anybody on an 800 or $1,200
Yeah.
calorie diet, but if we don't have lean muscle mass, our calorie needs are not as high as they should be. So the more muscle that we have, absolutely the better. And we know muscle is associated with longevity. So those with the highest lean muscle mass have the greatest longevity. And who doesn't want to live, 80 to 90 healthy, vibrant years lifting tons of weight
Yes.
in the gym? Like that's what I
Yes.
want.
Thank you. I want to eat more. I want to be strong AF, and I want to be like my mother-in-law who is a breast cancer survivor. She I asked her, I'm actually going to interview her here. I said, why do she walks, she gardens, but when she's gardening, she's pulling the wheelbarrow and she's doing her own strength training just in her natural environment. She said, you know what? I want to live. She has, because of treatment, more likely to have osteoporosis, right? And she said, the strength training is going to keep me all together. I tell my clients all the time, if you don't do this, you fall down, you're going to break, right? Strength
Yeah.
training is going to help you so much in just having stronger, healthier bones, and then obviously moving freely in space and not being, stuck to something, to like a walker or a wheelchair, being able to live your life freely and have that freedom in your later years. But my mother-in-law is like my she's who I look up to in regards to health, and she's 80. She's 80 years old and still she lives on a hill. So the garden is at the bottom of the hill. So she's just going up and down. So no, I love that. And I love that you touched on eating enough. I think that you know, for me, I'll see women who are going through perimenopause and they have been in this ridiculously restrictive diet for
Mm.
decades, or they believe that they have. Now, obviously, we don't know if that's true. They could be more in a binge and restrict cycle than anything else. And, they'll go into programs who will restrict their foods, to this, 1,200 calorie, even 1,500 calories. And their bodies just aren't letting go. Their bodies don't let go of the weight. These are women who never have lived at maintenance. They've never learned what it feels like to be eating in a way that supports your body and supports, as I say, has your body firing on all cylinders. So, what is your advice for that person who thinks I just need to eat more, or eat less and move more? And by eating less, I'm going to go to the lowest amount of food that I can possibly look at. What is your advice to that woman, especially again, maybe a woman going through perimenopause more specifically?
Yeah. So speaking of eating less and just moving more, our body knows when we're in a deficit and it creates an immense amount of stress. And so typically that deficit, while deficits are important oftentimes to weight loss, right? Because we want to be, burning more than we're eating. There is some of that calories in, calories out is an important concept. However, the most important piece of this that's often overlooked, especially in this period, is the what are we eating?
Hmm.
Because when we're eating a really nutrient dense diet, and by that I mean high in vitamins and minerals, high in healthy fats, right? Avoid of seed oils and trans fats, and adequate protein, our body has what it needs. We're less likely to binge on the unhealthy things. We're more likely to feel energized for our workouts and move our bodies when we are getting what we need. And so when I find that patients are telling me, I do so great, Julie, all the way, until about 6 o'clock at night, and then I just can't help myself. I'm hungry after dinner. It typically
Mm.
is because they're not eating enough and because they've had this mindset of fasting is so healthy for my body and I'm going to restrict all day and maybe only eat one meal a day, which is horrible. I mean, the worst thing that a perimenopausal woman can do right now, I'll tell you, is restrict down to one meal a day
Mhm.
and go to HIIT classes 5 to 6 times a week. Like
Thank you.
will your body is going to be upset with you. And how we're going to see it, you're going to have hype. Oftentimes, this person, like a person I'm envisioning, so many of my patients are going to have high cholesterol, high blood sugar, and abdominal weight that they just can't lose, and their energy is going to be totally tanked.
Mhm.
We can't live like that. Many times, like it works for a little while, and then suddenly you're like stopped, you're stalled out. And again, that long period of calorie deficit, um, long periods of calorie deficits can put an extreme amount of stress on your physiology.
Absolutely. And you said it earlier, you're a business owner, you're a mother of three. Like for me, my father has cancer. So, making sure that we're taking care of our aging parents, we have relationships. Then we're not eating, we're eating one meal a day, we're doing, HIIT classes 5 to 6 days a week, we already have an absorbent amount of stress, especially if we don't have a foundation of emotional and stress management. Then on top of
Mhm.
that, we're putting our bodies through this restrictive diet. And then on top of that, we're adding in this stress of workouts, even though we've made up in our minds that this is our stress relief, is that HIIT class. It can, I mean, the body is just in this chronically stressed state, and women don't realize like what used to work for us when we were 20, and our worst, the worst thing that could happen to us is maybe our debit card didn't go through for our vodka soda. Like that was our main thing that we were worried about. We're in a totally different state of mind, a state of responsibility and stress. And what you're talking about, is only adding to that. And so I think that's so important to note here. What are there some other lifestyle changes that you want our listeners to walk away with today?
Sleep. Sleep is
Mhm.
also completely overlooked and discounted for the importance that we need for sleep, rest, and recovery. And so, if we're not getting adequate amounts of sleep, it is creating stress and inflammation downstream. There's a really interesting research that's come out in, I'd say, the last 5 to 10 years about I mean, certainly the importance of sleep has come to more of a forefront during that time, but the, have you heard of the glymph system?
No.
So the glymph system, we have a lymphatic system inside of our body that filters waste and
Hmm.
toxins. Well, we've identified that there's a glymph system that works inside of our brain. And the brain is only able to eliminate waste, from my understanding, during periods of deep restorative sleep. And so if we are not getting into deep and restorative sleep and we feel like garbage the next day, it's not our fault, right? We didn't allow our brain to detoxify the waste and metabolic processes like waste products
Hmm.
from itself, right? And move those out. So allow yourself the time to recover and sleep adequately. I know it's challenging, but consistent bedtime routines, avoiding screen times before bed, at least an hour, the blue light and the light to our eyes, we cannot sleep restfully. Um, and again, the downstream impacts of that are huge. So, tightening up sleep, looking at the stress of our day, our nutrition is extremely important to overall health and great hormone health. Some of that we can
Hmm.
improve with those factors, and the other part, you know, maybe more of our genetics and just our age as well.
So I really appreciate you answering my questions. And I actually put this on social media to see if our followers had any specific questions for you. So we're just going to take a few of them. And the first one is, how does alcohol metabolize differently as we age? And or does that happen?
Yep, absolutely. So there's a couple components to think of and consider when it comes to alcohol metabolization, and it's twofold. So when we're talking about, I guess the challenge with this question is to what age? Age definitely impacts. Liver health impacts alcohol metabolization, and then muscle mass impacts metabolization. So
Mm.
as we age, we are losing muscle mass after about the age of 30, which that was 12 years ago for me, if we're not working to prevent it. The fact of the matter is most people are not working to prevent lean muscle mass. And so alcohol has a really negative impact on hormone health. Um, and one of the best things that we can do is definitely for most people reducing alcohol use to no more, I feel like no more than 1 to 2 cocktails per week, no more than
Mhm.
1 to 2 cocktails per week for women. Men can tolerate more of that. And the reason why is because they have more muscle mass, right? So, a person that may have problems with their liver function and with detoxification will see those impacts more severely. So, definitely our tolerance to alcohol does go down as we age, and it really has a lot to do with muscle mass and liver function.
So you're saying if you have more muscle mass, your body is able to metabolize alcohol better. I'm
Better.
asking for
Yes.
a friend.
Better, yes. However, the most recent research came out and says, look, you know, alcohol under no circumstance is recommended because it's a toxin. And the reason why we
Mhm.
feel tipsy and we have a really good time is because it's a toxin. So
Right.
I know there's a lot of people who have gone alcohol free recently. I have had periods where I've gone completely alcohol free, but I've never been a really heavy drinker. So for me, one cocktail on the weekends or two cocktails on the weekends, I feel like is a safe amount for myself. So everybody needs to make that decision individually. But I'd say more than that really does impact your goal. So if your goal is weight loss, longevity, health optimization, then the more alcohol you're drinking really is having a negative impact on things like your hormones, your sleep, right?
Sleep.
Hugely impactful to sleep. And so avoiding it to the greatest extent possible is probably recommended, or it is definitely recommended by my medical peers.
Right, right. No, I see that with sleep specifically. And then they feel cruddy the next day that, for my clients, because we do focus on emotional and binge eating, we'll just open up the can of worms to then soothe and comfort through food. So it just becomes this like vicious cycle. A lot of the other questions are more just around, things that we've touched on, how to build muscle mass. Does that change over time? Losing body fat. We talked about that in regards to insulin resistance and changes in estrogen and just caring for your body and managing sleep, you know, um, having, the same sleep, going to sleep and wake up time is important. Managing blue light. For us, we also have that mindset component, even just something like a brain dump where we're just writing down the things we need to do the next day, trying to allow our minds to just clear. I also use things like sleep stories. Have you ever used Brain FM, the
Mhm.
binaural beats? I do enjoy that. It helps me, and I use it for a variety of different things to help me kind of get back into that parasympathetic nervous system because there's different types of the recording. So that's something that I've talked about here. And so, a lot of the things and the questions we have they really go back to the basics, right? Going back to everything you've talked about today, having a diet that's rich in nutrient dense foods, being able to, obviously focusing on strength training, feeding your body enough, managing things like sleep, like stress. But then also, I think a very, very big key takeaway is check in with yourself. Check in with your body. Like, how am I feeling? Is this headache something I should pay attention to? Is that crash at 3 p.m. something, or the fact that I am tired and wired? I can't go to sleep at night. Like, really start. I would even say, and maybe you can give suggestions on how to keep track of your symptoms, but, at least start checking in with yourself on how we're feeling, I think is one of the biggest takeaways on top of sticking to the basics. So in closing, is there anything, answering those questions or anything else that you think would be helpful for our community to hear today so that they feel like, they're ready. They've got a plan.
Absolutely. So as a population, as a society, if we were focusing on the basics, we would have significantly less chronic disease than we currently have. And that is why we talked about nutrition, lifestyle, mindset, like those three components are essential to our long-term health, and we must be doing them. The fact that primary care and the traditional medical system is not talking about these key components is a tragedy, quite honestly, that they're not being discussed more prevalently than they are in
Right.
our system. So I would say that number one, like every plan needs to have those three components. And so whether it's your naturopath, your primary care, your functional medicine provider that's supporting you in those things, or whether you're reaching out to an individual like yourself, Christina, that emphasizes those things as a primary and wants to look to the specialties and the disciplines, the medications, whether those are things like even like peptides and hormone replacement therapy should not be the primary. And that's when patients come to me and they're on hormone replacement therapy and they're still not feeling well. Like, and we've never done those other things, big problem, big red flag for
Mhm.
the office that's just prescribing and not talking about the basics, because these are the things we all must be doing if we want to live well and age well. And I'll close with we all, and many your listeners are already going to agree with this, but many of us, most of us should have or know we should have a financial plan to be able to reach retirement and the end of life. Like we wouldn't not do that, but we
Mm-hmm.
can so easily overlook things like cardiovascular disease risk, cancer risk, like to leave those discussions off of the table. Again, it's not fair as individuals. We have a world of research at our fingertips and being able to use what we know from an individual perspective and what we know from a population perspective and help you build a plan that helps you to age well and not live with chronic disease is by far the best thing that we can do for ourselves. Huge
Yes.
gift.
I love that. Investing in yourself, creating a plan for your future. And, I think for us as in my company, we're very much on the creating a foundation that our clients can utilize and replicate, and we explain it with flexibility because, if you have an illness or injury or whatever it is, we may have to turn down something like your movements, your exercise, but maybe we turn up and really focus on nutrition and creating those foundations for life so that they can replicate this for the rest of their lives. Awesome. Tell my listeners where they can find you. I want them to be able to connect with you, whether it's via social media. We do have a good chunk of clients in the Valley, in the Phoenix metro area. So please share where we can find you.
Yes. So that you can go to soulwellness.com, to our website, which is a great place to get more information and to learn more about what we do, and how we do it. And you can schedule a free call there too, because for 30 minutes, we can break down your health, what you're struggling with, and where you'd like to go. And I promise that 30 minutes, you will leave with information, whether that's I think Julie might be the next, might be the right primary care provider for me because we do functional medicine. We do functional primary care. So what a great way to address your health with a primary care who supports you. If that's not me and you need something else, or you're looking for someone else, our network of other professionals who are going to support you at the same level, like people like you, Christina, is my promise. So you will leave with the right direction and knowing more about your health and what to do next from that strategy call. And then lastly, Instagram is a great place to find me. So Julie Hinman _soul wellness is a great place to find me online. And we'd love for you to send us a message.
Yes, and we will add all those links to the show notes below so you can connect with Dr. Julie. Thank you so much. Like I said, my brain has so many questions, but hopefully we can have you back on. I'm sure that this episode in itself is going to bring in a slew of questions from our listeners. So thank you for taking the time to share with us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for listening today. If you like this information, we are going to continue to share with providers and experts in areas that Coach Amanda and I want to gain more information on ourselves, but also educate you as our listeners. For those of you who want to give us a follow, you can follow us on Mindset of Matter or fitbyamanda.az on Instagram. If you'd like to watch this on YouTube, you can follow us at The Mindset of Matter. And if you're interested in connecting with Dr. Julie, her information will be in the show notes below, as well as information to connecting with us directly for our coaching program. And as I always want you to leave here understanding one thing, remember this: what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.